Hey guys, I'm Jax and this is my spoiler review for the first season of The Sandman. So straight off the bat, I just want to say I haven't read any of the comics, I have no idea about the story or the characters or any of that, so this is all just from what the show presents us as a TV series as this first season is on Netflix. And I know for some that might be blasphemous, I've heard nothing but amazing positive things, and having watched this first season, I understand why. This show is amazing. This show is so much fun. It's so dark and twisted and nightmarish, but it's also like a dream come true. It is so wondrous. It's so imaginative. It's so bright and colorful, but also kind of dark and horrific. It is really just so vividly different as well. Like, what I loved is that it was like throughout the season, so much of it felt so separate and different, but it still didn't, it wasn't kind of like, oh wait, what show am I watching now? It all felt very cohesive within this one narrative, all kind of two narratives that they're doing in this first season. Kind of almost did feel like two seasons, and there's negatives and, you know, positives to that. But overall, I thought this was masterful. I thought this was one of the best things I've seen in a very long time. The first two episodes are really, really good. Episode 3, I'm like, oh, okay, I'm quite enjoying this. Episode 4, 5, 6, masterpieces of TV. And they're all kind of standalone episodes, like fully and wholly. Episode 5 is like a bottle episode. Brilliant stuff. I thought 5 and 6, 4, 5, 6. 4, 5, and 6 were just amazing. I loved it so much. And then episodes 7 to 10, it's kind of the second story, part 2 of the season. And it's good. It's not amazing. It kind of feels a bit like they spent all their budget on the first half, but it also kind of, it makes sense to kind of not be using the budget because it's kind of more of a human story. We start following a human character in Rose Walker, and she's good, and all her side characters are a lot of fun. I really enjoyed them, but it had this kind of feeling where I'm like, yeah, this is like a pretty good show. Like a show that, you know, I watch it and go, that was pretty good. Because when I finished episode 6, I texted everybody that I thought would love this, and I just went, this is the best new thing. Watch it right now. Episode 5 and 6, just wow. Like, honestly, it is kind of crazy how perfect it is, and then how kind of like, it's good. And I'm not saying it's bad, but I kind of feel like a little bit of that dreamlike magic was gone. And not to say that it turned into a nightmare or anything like that. It almost felt like it was 2 full seasons in one, where you get that first season, you're like, oh my god, it's so imaginative and creative and amazing, it's so good. How are they possibly going to follow it up with a season 2? Then you watch season 2 and you're like, I'm still enjoying the characters, I'm still enjoying the world, but this really is kind of like they'd run out of all their ideas for the first season and they're doing this. And I know it's based off comics, so that's not really the case at all, but I just kind of felt like it took kind of a more like, kind of a slower route. There was less big fantastical ideas and themes and feeling going around in it. It isn't going to put you to sleep. It isn't a nightmare of a second half of a season. It doesn't kind of drop off a cliff of quality. It just has this different pace to it, a different kind of tone. It slowly kind of builds itself back up again. And in a way, it kind of just feels like a second season. I think my issues with like the second half as well kind of come from Netflix's inability to kind of change with the times. They're like your old grandpa who's like, oh, back in my day, back in me old Netflix day, we released everything at once. That's just how we did it. Netflix, you gotta change. Like, I really think this season should have been an episode a week. This would have been the next big thing for 10 weeks. I don't know, on it, the first 6 episodes, I was like, I could have a whole week sitting here with this. The back half, yeah, I kind of enjoyed just binging it. It felt like kind of one, kind of, you know, 4 episodes, yeah, one sitting, that's good enough. I really do think you just play the first 6, then release the next 4. Or maybe just 5, have a clean cut, and then you start, you know, part 2 a month later, like you did with Stranger Things, with the best episode of the season. Maybe that, yeah, that would be how you should do it. They should just split it up a little bit, because I think you're watching it, you're like, this is good, this is good, this is the best thing I've ever seen. Okay, they were the weak ones, but it's still a good show. So yeah, just, that's probably my biggest issue, and honestly, my only issue. So the first couple of episodes, Mr. Dreamlord himself, Mr. King of Dreams, Morpheus, he gets captured into a spell by Tywin Lannister. Tywin Lannister's like, I want my son back, I want to speak to death. He doesn't get death, he gets dreams. I also love that all the endless, these beings of beyond anything, these endless beings, all their names start with D. That's a lot of fun. I can't wait for them to just kind of keep whipping out ones where I'm like, they found another word that starts with D. That means like a whole thing. Really exciting. I love the little bits we get from like some of the other siblings, but it's mostly about Dream. So Dream, he's captured, he loses his magical ruby gemstone, he loses his sweet sand dust of magic or whatever, and he loses his horrendously creepy, just magnificent looking, like the visual artistry in this show, which I presume is just ripped straight out of the comics, because so much of it, like the villain, the Corinthian, he's got like these glasses and he just has a look where I'm like, that's like a comic look. Like, that just, the way it's so kind of stylized and specific, it just reminds me of watching like a Sin City or something, where they kind of get up, just feels very unique, and it feels like they've grabbed it from somewhere. So he needs to get his helm back and his other two magical items. That gas mask helm thing, I just, so terrifying, so awesome to look at. And so he gets out of his prison cell, and it's been 100 years. A bunch of people have fallen asleep. His dreaming world called the Dreaming, it's all destroyed and ruined and stuff. So he's got to kind of build it back up, get his sweet magical items, and restore his, powers and all that stuff. And this is the highlight of the show. This is really some of the best stuff, where he's just kind of meeting new people, meeting old acquaintances, and trying to kind of gather back his power. And as this is going on, we've got a little subplot with one of the characters who has his gemstone ruby thing, and it's played by everyone's favorite professor from Harry Potter, Lupin. David Thewlis, who played Lupin, and everyone's like, he's so lovable and charming and amazing. And then in everything else, he's slimy and devious and just horrible. It might be because I just literally 2 days ago finished rewatching Fargo season 3, in which he plays the most despicable, slimy, greasy, horrible villain. I can't unsee it. And he's back playing a very devious man who wants to, get rid of all the lies in the world. And that comes with some horrendous consequences. Just a fantastic performance, as always. David Thewlis is always amazing, and he's a really, really great villain. I kind of feel like he's not in the show enough. I really kind of found it a bit disappointing when he kind of gets taken out of the mix at the end of episode 5. But that being said, that episode is perfect. It's so good, and so maybe it's like, maybe don't utilize him too much, and then I'm kind of like, oh, we could have got rid of this guy, because that episode and that kind of climax to everything was incredibly satisfying. So episode 2 has Cain and Abel and their fun little gargoyle thing, and we get a really sad scene with the gargoyle, and that's kind of when I went, I think I'm vibing this show. I think this is pretty cool. But then episode 3 is like, you want to see Mrs. Lady Constantine, and she's doing magic and powers, and she's haunted by nightmarish visions of dreams and of past horrors and, just bad stuff, and she's just sassy and swearing and doing crazy stuff, and there's a big demon, and it's not the demon she thought, but she's doing all that kind of Constantine stuff. And I'm like, yes, I want to see that. And they're like, who would you want to see that? And I'm like, I have like a list of people, and they're like, no, scrap your list, throw it in the bin, light the bin on fire, because we have the best casting. Clara Oswald from Doctor Who. Oh, it is brilliant casting. She is awesome. It is kind of surreal to hear her swear, just because I'm like so used to her in Doctor Who. I'm sure she's in other things, but I love her in Doctor Who. I know people are kind of mixed on her in Doctor Who and that character arc. I love her. I love her so much. She's so much fun. She's such a great actress. I love her, and she's amazing in this. It is so fun to see her kind of play, I don't know, it felt like she was like magic Doctor Who, and I'm like, oh my god, it's like magic Doctor Who, but she was the companion in Doctor Who, but now she's a Doctor Who, but a magic one. And I loved it. It was so much fun to see her play that, and it was really disappointing at the end of the episode when I was like, oh, wait, is she not going to just be teaming up with him for the rest of the season? And that's when it suddenly became clear that this was going to be very, episodic in a weird way. Like, second episode, we get a Cain and Abel. Third episode, we get a Constantine. Episode 4, we get Hell. Episode 5, bottle episode. You don't want any more lies in this diner. No more lies in the diner. Episode 6, we meet death, and it's kind of like 2 episodes in one, like a double-parter of different death kind of stuff. And then the back half comes along and goes, oh, you like that standalone, self-contained kind of, each episode is different, but there's one kind of story coming through. Well, screw you. Now it's just going to be a 4-parter finale, and it's going to be fine. Maybe the worst part of the season. I've said that too much. It's fine. I didn't hate it. I just... Ooh, let's just start talking about 4, 5, and 6, because that's really what I want to talk about. So Morpheus, the King of Dreams, Mr. Dream King, God, dreamy boy man, Mr. Sad face, swoony voice dream man, he's like, I gotta go to hell. Me and this little bird, you remember Patton Oswalt from Happy, where he played a little thing and he did a voice? This again, but a bird. So Dream traverses through hell, and every single second of the depiction of hell was just amazing. Straight off the bat, it just looks so cool. I feel like they spent a lot of their budget on this episode. This is the one that just kind of wowed me. Like, we've seen his dream world and the big gates of Dreamland, the dreaming or whatever, and opening, and just the kind of endless, I don't know, that was really cool. Like, the really big gates and all that stuff was really, really nice. But I think the way they presented hell was really cool. We've got some classic stuff of just, one of them's like, oh, it's cold. I didn't think hell would be cold. Haha. Oh, you bring your own fire to death, to hell and all that stuff. But the presentation of hell was just stunning. There wasn't a single shot throughout all of hell where I wasn't just like, wow, this is awesome. This is so, so cool. This is when I really started going, I think I'm in love with this show. I think this is one of the coolest things ever. There are some shots of Satan, Lucifer going like, yeah, all the boys cheering, and there's like thousands of demons, and there's fire pits flaming. The lighting is really good where you don't get a good glimpse, but you see enough, and it's just exciting and stunning. It gives off that Saruman with all these Uruk-hai kind of vibes. But let's get to Lucifer. Lucifer the Morning Star, played incredibly, and once again, impeccable casting, Brienne of Tarth. Brienne of Tarth as Satan. Like, what the hell? That's crazy. It's so much fun. It's so inspired. She does a great job. It's really fun seeing her play something so different to Brienne. She has this really great aura about her, and I just love all her get-ups. She's got these black bat-like wings, and they're just really fleshy and gross, but she's wearing gorgeous dresses, and then it kind of changes and morphs in different situations and moments, and she just looks amazing. All her interactions with her and Dream are just really, really fun, but the standout is when she's like, all right, you're gonna have a fight with this demon who stole your helm, and you're gonna do a trial by combat. And I'm like, haha, because you are from that show where they also did trial by combats. That's a bit of fun. And then I was kind of like, I wonder how this fight's gonna go, because she takes the place of the little gremlin demon boy. He's like, I choose Brienne of Tarth, because look how big she is, and I'm a little gremlin man. And his Dream's like, oh boy, I'm fighting Lucifer. Oh no. And I'm like, okay, is it going to be a bit of fisticuffs? That's going to be fun. Or is it going to be them shooting magic or something? But no, there's no magic, there's no fisticuffs, there's no swords or anything like that. It's like this dream-like kind of battle where they both say a thing and then they have to one-up each other. It's like improv or something. I don't know, it was utterly surreal and wonderful. It just took me, it was visually stunning for one, like seeing, she's like the direwolf. Get it? Because I was from Thrones, so direwolf, and the direwolf's all like there and the blackness of darkness that comes out, and there's like a snake, and the snake does a thing, that there's an eagle, and then it goes into eternities and fireballs of doom and just all this stuff. And it was just visually breathtaking, but also just so kind of amazingly unique and separate to any kind of other fight I've seen ever. Like, it's just, I don't know, it was really, really surreal, and it was a fun way to kind of represent, I suppose, I don't know if it's exactly from the comics or whatever, but like, it just felt so kind of representational of like how kind of big and eternal and separate these entities, Lucifer and Dream, is. But they're also kind of getting hurt by the things happening, and so it was like improv mixed with like a little bit of like Yu-Gi-Oh! When like their monsters are fighting, but then sometimes they're like, oh, ow, my dragon hurt, but I also hurt, or whatever. It was just brilliant. I loved it. It was utterly surreal. And so unfortunately we don't get any more from Hell or Brienne of Tarth as Satan until there's kind of almost like a post-credit scene kind of stinger at the end where she talks to this black void, and there's just like lots of eyes and teeth, and they're all just chattering away and talking. It just looks so cool. The visual imagery in this show, it's just so fun. It's so imaginative. And she's all like, ha ha ha, in season 2, I will be in it, maybe more. Ha ha ha. Then we get to episode 5, the bottle episode. The episode that's like a soap opera in a diner. And it's just got all these random new characters. David Thewlis, he's like, my mum gave me the amulet of ripping people's bodies into nothing and you can't die. But I gave it to a lady in a car. And now I've got my sweet ruby of dreams or whatever. It's all good. And my dream is for there to be no more lies. So he sits in a diner, and all these little character interactions, we've got 5 or 6 people, they all just kind of come in, and it's just like, I don't know, it was so cool. It felt like a kind of like a magical version of a Black Mirror episode, or kind of like a Twilight Zone episode, where it's just like, here's 6 people, here's the thing that happens. Oh, also, the devil's in the corner, and there's no more lies because the devil's here. It was just stunning. It was so good. I loved every character. I particularly loved the main waitress. I just found her super compelling, and I was just immediately on her side. I was heartbroken when she was heartbroken, and sad when she was sad, and all the things, all the emotions and stuff. But it just kind of slowly played out where you're like, you can see what's gonna happen. You can see how it's all gonna twist and turn. But just the way it did, it's like just so fascinating. It was so thought-provoking. It was so terrifying, the way everyone's like living these lives and saying these truths to each other, but deep inside there's all these I don't know, these real truths. Like, if they weren't saying all these lies, what is it going to lead to? And then it gets a bit sexual. Then it gets a bit violent. But then I loved at the end how Dreams comes in and he's like, no, you don't understand. You're getting this all wrong, Lupin from Harry Potter, or that slimy, disgusting man with horrible teeth from Fargo Season 3, David Thewlis. Mr. John, you've got it wrong. And he kind of goes through this whole kind of speech and he kind of goes back and we replay everything before they're all murderous and sexual and, not saying the lies and talking about their dreams, their hopes, their inspirations, their aspirations. I don't know. It was really, really great. It just kind of closed out the episode in this really kind of, I don't know, hopeful, inspiring way, because it kind of was like, oh, actually, everyone's got these lies and everyone's living separate lives to what they're actually saying. And it kind of took a bit of a pessimistic, dark, horrible turn. And then Dream came in and just kind of brought it back into this beautiful light. It was just a stunning episode. I honestly think this is easily one of the best episodes of TV I've seen in a very long time. I really, really loved it. I love just the setting in a diner. I love that moment where they go out and then they suddenly come back in and he orders the big burger again. And you're suddenly starting to think, oh no, okay. This isn't just like a little scene where he's going to play with it and see what it does for a bit and then he's going to move on. We're spending the yappy in this diner. And that moment that clicked where I'm like, oh, this is a bottle episode in the diner, I got very excited and it didn't let down. It didn't stop being amazing. In fact, it just kept getting better and better and better. And then we find out actually the whole world has been experiencing this as he's been doing this in this isolated diner as well. But of course, all good things come to an end. All dreams you end up waking up from. And this episode ends with David Thewlis' character, Mr. John, who wants to rid the world of lies. He has a big dream magical battle with Sandman, Mr. Morpheus, dream god man himself. And it ends with him thinking he's killed him. And turns out he's just a little man, a little thingy on his hand, and we get a big dream god man, and he's like, you screwed up. You crushed my thing, but then its dust became me again or whatever. I don't know. Magic or whatever. Who cares? In the end, he beat him, he puts him to sleep, and he's gonna have real bad nightmares for like forever or whatever. And it was sad to see him go, but it also kind of, I just once again was reminded, oh, it's like Mrs. Constantine, Clara Oswald. Joanne Constantine? Something like that. Close to Joanne, I think it was. It was like, I loved her. Oh, it's just a contained episode, but maybe we'll see them in the future because presumably this is going to be like a comic that went for just bloody ages or whatever. So hopefully we see him again, but if we don't, he had a great run. He was the great kind of first half of the show's antagonist, and that episode is it was so good. And it was fun to see, self-contained, little magic things. And then big magic powers going everywhere. And he's like, I'm crumbling your dream world, dream god. And then dream god's like, actually, I got you in my palm of my hand. I'm the dream god now. Just so visually stunning and interesting. And I loved both of their different, philosophies and ideals. And they're going up against each other. And their ideologies they don't match, so they fight and stuff. All great stuff. Bloody loved it. So now we come to episode 6, the second best episode, or maybe the best one. I don't know, 5 and 6, they're both just so perfect. It's so amazing. I can't get over how great they are. And this one really feels like 1 to 5, he's got to get his magical gems back and fight a Lupin, but Lupin's evil now arc. And then the 7 to 10 is, there's a dream vortex, and it's a vortex of dreams, and it's a lady, and it's owner, and whatever. Also, glasses man, but his eyes have teeth and he likes to eat eyes with his eye sockets of teeth. Horrendous to just look at. I'm glad we didn't ever get a close-up of So episode 6, we meet Death. And Death is amazing. She is so well cast. It's such a good performance. It is such a interesting, different kind of take on death. It's really melancholy, but kind of beautiful. But then the scenes we get are really kind of horrible and, I don't know, really sad. It made me really, really sad, but there was the kind of that beauty in it, they've lived their lives and she's there at that last moment to kind of help them. But there's also just this really twisted, just sickness that I felt while watching it, particularly the baby moment. As soon as she walked in and I saw the crib, I'm just like, oh no, oh. And then right at the end, when it kind of comes full circle and she's like, hey, remember Franklin? I said I was going to see you again, but I saw you again. And he's like, almost got hit by that car. Isn't that crazy? And she's like, oh, Franklin. I'm like, oh, Franklin, no. I don't know. I love the idea of I don't know. It's so just crazy and just so interesting to be like, dreams, the god of dreams and death itself, like these entities beyond us and because of us, like just wandering the streets, having a convo. And she's like, it's been a while. It's like, yeah, I was trapped in a little bubble thing or whatever by Tywin Lannister. You didn't want to help me? And I don't know, just their conversations, the way they come, just the back and forth, just the way it was like exploring ideas and themes. And they're really starting to show Dream as a character. Like the character of Dream, the performance is amazing. He looks great. He's got this really soft-spoken kind of powerful voice, but he's very eternal, which I guess, of course, he's Dreams itself, but he's also like a bit kind of like hard to like latch onto as a character. And that's probably the only upside of the back half where we latch onto a human. I'm like, I can latch onto her like feelings and emotions. Save my brother. I get that. I have a brother. I'd want to save him. Like there's an emotional human connection there where he's almost above it. Whereas in this episode, it goes, hey, these endless beings, these siblings that all start with the letter D, maybe they've actually got a bit of human in them too. And we start to explore that, and it's really interesting, it's really fascinating. I loved all of that. But then the episode goes, you thought this was a good episode? Well, actually, it's going to be the best thing you've ever seen, because they go into a bar in like 1389 or whatever it is, olden ye days, and they go to this pub, and they just hear a drunk guy being like, I'm going to live forever! Death! Ha ha ha! I laugh in the face of death! Ha 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 ha! And then they're like, let's do a little wager. I bet you he doesn't like living if you just made him immortal. And she's just like, yeah, sure, whatever. Doesn't touch him, doesn't snap her fingers or anything. She's just like, goes, yeah, it's done. And then the guy goes up and he's like, in 100 years, dude, forgot the guy's name, but 100-year man we'll call him. It's like, dude, Mr. Immortal, see you here in 100 years. And then what we get is presented with this montage-esque kind of, it's not like a montage, but it's like we slowly just go through every 100 years, them meeting again in this pub every 100 years. And it's glorious. It's so amazing. If anything, I just wish it was longer. Like, I just wish they talked and sat for more. Like, if I lived for 100 years and I went back and sat with what I thought was the devil or some god that gave me this. Like, he doesn't even realize that Dream didn't do this. It was actually Death, his sister. Just madness. He has no idea what's going on. I would sit down and like the conversations end so quickly, and he's like, well, in 100 years, we've had a 2-minute conversation because there's an episode, we want to be brief, let's not overly drag this out, and it kind of goes at a clip. I would have sat down with him and been like, no, you tell me. I'm not leaving this bar. You tell me what the hell's going on. I've waited 100 years for this. And then the next time I'd be like, I've waited 200 years. Let me know something. But apart from the mad insanity of how brief their conversations are, for how long they have been separated, the idea of it is just spectacular. The presentation is so much fun. Like, there's a point where he's all like, oh, I'm rich and lavish and I'm just having the best life. And as soon as I saw this, I'm like, I will bet someone literally $1 million. I'll never earn $1 million, but I'm betting $1 million. I'll go bankrupt. That's how positive I am. The next time we see him, he'll be like a sniveling, like, wretched old man. He'll look like Reek. He'll be like hairy and just like boneless, and he'll like, just looking disgusting and horrible and stuff. And what do you know? That's what he looks like. A drunken hobo, long hair, dirty, smelling, and he hasn't eaten for days. But the way we saw him progress and transform over this time was it was so much fun. It's so exciting. This is maybe the highlight of the whole series. I found it so interesting, so cool. Just seeing the pub change over time very slowly, as time changes. And then that last jump into like the 80s, I think, like 1980s, which is crazy. Like, oh my God, we really progressed in that last 100 years. And the fact that they had that fight, and they're not going to meet up because he was trapped in a little bubble thing by Tywin Lannister. And so he gets there and he's like, oh, I think I was stuck up. And I'm like, oh my God, this actually makes me so, so sad. Like, you get stood up when you haven't met someone and that feels bad. Imagine waiting 100 years and being like, I hope I didn't offend my immortal, godless, like God-being friend that maybe gave me immortality. Or presumably he did. That's what he thinks that Dream gave him that. Just devastating, heartbreaking. That moment as well when Dream finally gets there and it's all destroyed and it's broken and it's like an abandoned house, abandoned bar or whatever. It's just like, oh man, that really hurts. And then he says, new bar. That way, it's just like, oh, they're gonna reunite. It's gonna be so beautiful. And that moment where he gets there, he says, friend, I don't know. It was just perfect. It was really beautiful. I love these two characters, and maybe I love them so much because we didn't get so much time with them, or I just want more. Like, I could have had a full episode of just that. Honestly, I think both of these two little segments could have been stretched out to be full episodes. Maybe not full, like 40, 50-minute episodes. Maybe there'd be shorter episodes for the season. But I do think they could have had more time to develop. Maybe it's just stripped right off the comic and they just went word for word and didn't add anything. Maybe they even took some stuff out. But I would have gone a little bit more because I think this episode was so good. The ideas at play here were so fascinating, so interesting. Seeing a man go through time and seeing him every 100 years is such a unique, amazing idea. I love playing with time. I love time travel, timey-wimey stuff. I love gods and beings doing that kind of stuff. It did remind me of Doctor Who, you know, he keeps coming back. He's like, oh no, it's been another 5 years. You've aged. Oh, this is bad. And they're like, I'm sad. You left me. It's been 200,000 million days for me, but only 5 seconds for you. And it's a really fascinating, interesting concept. I really just wish they'd played with it more because after this, it gets a bit kind of like, yeah, this is fun and nice and cool and whatever, but get me back to that 100-year guy. I liked him. And Death, we didn't see Death again. She was so cool and just kind of, I don't know, so uniquely different to how Death represented a lot of the time. And I loved how she kind of embraced her job and she's like, there's something beautiful about being there in that last moment. I don't know, really fascinating stuff. Okay, so I've ragged on the back four and I've said I didn't really love them. It's kind of like, I loved at first the idea, like right at the end of the 7th episode, and kind of leads into the 8th where I'm like, oh, this is going to be like a double parter, and then in my mind went, nah, this will be the last arc. We're going to just focus on this. And in theory, I really like that. I didn't hate any of the performances. I didn't even hate any of the characters or anything. I love that teethy man, teethy eye. He's got teeth, but he's also got teeth in his eyes. He's back and he's like, let's kill some people and eat some eyeballs or whatever. He eats them with his eyeball teeth, right? Not his normal teeth. That's what everyone got, right? Just so upsetting to look at. Overall, I felt we spent maybe a little bit too much time in kind of just Earth and just normal settings, and the visuals weren't kind of as shocking, surprising, and amazing. I felt like the ideas weren't being as interesting and thought-provoking as before. We just have a girl who's the Dream Vortex, and maybe she's going to cause the end of the Earth, but Dream has got to stop it or kill her. And the whole time when he's like, I've got to kill her. Oh, and then Teethy Boy is like, you're going to get killed by him. And I'm like, I just don't see her dying like this. And then twist of story, she doesn't get killed and the great-grandmother does. I just didn't really feel that much. It just felt a bit like, yeah, well, I knew something like this was going to happen. I knew there was going to be a little twist and turn. But I've talked about the things I don't like, but the things I did love in the back half of the season. So we get a serial killer convention, and they call it serial convention, like the milk and the sugary things kids eat in the morning, cereal. Madness. Absolute madness. Having like 100 serial killers in this serial killer convention was just so heightened and extreme and insane. It felt like every time I remember thinking that Miami had one too many serial killers every year for Dexter to like face off against, I'm like, well, that's realistic compared to this absolute nonsense, madness, insanity that is every serial killer in like the country just all gathering together and all just being like, oh, so you kill like that? Oh, I kill like that. Madness. There was like one moment of like real funny, like hilarity, kind of this black humor, kind of insane moment of Stephen Fry's in this as well. Stephen Fry is one of the nightmares who's gotten out, or maybe he's a dreamer. He's the fields and the flowers or something. I don't know. And he's wandering about, and he slowly clicks that this isn't a serial convention, it's a serial killer convention. And there's like him walking through a door and a door and a door. At one point he's like, oh yeah, I understand. Oh yeah, I respect these people. Wait, what? And it just builds and builds and builds until someone is literally like, that's why I like to kill people, because I'm a serial killer. And he's like, oh no. Really, really funny. But for the rest of it, just kind of sick and twisted and awful. There's a big fat pedophile. Hate him, obviously. Just, I don't know, really unsettling and kind of, I don't know, like I like the idea that there's this nightmare and he's like, I've made the perfect nightmare and it's going to help people, come, see this nightmare in their dreams, but then they're going to, face their fears in the real world, But then the nightmare's like, actually, I'm just going to walk around and just take people's eyes out and eat them with my eyeballs that are made of teeth. And he's inspired all these serial killers and they all get together. I don't know, there's like an idea in there that I love, but also just so many serial killers about where I'm just like, I just hate all of these people. The end of it as well though, when Dream was like, actually, you're all just going to feel really remorseful now, and I'm going to give you that human part of your body that you're all missing, that empathy, that morality part that you're all missing that made you serial killers. I'm going to give you that, but you're going to have to live with the fact that you were a serial killer. that was amazing. That was like a really good payoff to it all. But also, it felt like I don't know, it was like, from episode 6, like what we saw in 4, 5, 6, we went to hell and all these things, and then we're at a serial killer convention for the last 2 episodes. It just feels a bit weird. I don't know. I just didn't really kind of like love it. And I know I'm probably not meant to love it, but it just kind of felt like we're focusing on these really weird elements. And I just felt like we should maybe have been focusing on Dream a little bit more. And I don't know, we started focusing on Rose Walker and Jed a lot. Jed was a bit of fun when Jed has that just cosmic being black nightmare person who dresses up as his mum, and he dresses up as the Sandman. That was a really fun little moment where he's the superhero version of Sandman, and then he meets Sandman and he's like, I'm the Sandman, and Sandman's like, no dude, I'm the Sandman. Get out of that ridiculous superhero costume, you stupid little child. And that was a lot of fun. I had a lot of fun with that. And Rose Walker's whole journey, like to find her like brother, all that stuff, like emotionally, like I can connect to, which I found really interesting. But also, it was just like really awful to see this family for just $800 a month, like trap this child in like the basement for $800 a month. Like I don't know, just got really dirty and dark and horrible with the serial killer stuff. It was like, oh, we went to hell, but I didn't feel slimy there. I was like, look at all these demons and nightmare creatures. And here I'm just like, this man is just the worst man who's ever lived. Just feel gross and slimy and dirty. In kind of a very like, I didn't think I was watching this type of show. But also, it wasn't bad. It was entertaining still. I just thought we weren't focusing on Dream and the dream cosmic things. We did start focusing on that with some of the characters starting going to their own dreams, like this one lady and her husband has died and she wants to live in the dream with him. And that's probably one of the highlights. Like, that was amazing. And the end of that where they had to like stop living in the dream because he's dead. He has to go to hell. He can't live in the dreaming. That's for living people. Just heartbreaking, devastating stuff. All of that was really good. There was just something in that last arc that just made me go, oh, there was something magical and dreamlike. Whereas now it feels a bit more like, yeah, this is good. But is it a masterpiece? Because I would say the first 3 episodes are really fantastic. 4, 5, 6, masterpieces of TV. 7 to 10, pretty good. Thanks for watching, guys. Like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and comment below. I would love to know what everyone thought of The Sandman.